right, Anita, for more on Vice President Harris's trip to the border, let's bring in Border Patrol Council Vice President Art Del Cueto and former Chief Border Patrol Agent in Yuma, Arizona, Chris Clem. Gentlemen, thank you. Art, I want to start with you. What is the Border Patrol Union's reaction to Harris's visit?
Well, look, you got to remember, she's ignored it, the border completely for almost 4 years. Now, this close to the election, she decides to come down here, and what did she actually do? She went down there and she met with two members from leadership, right? She met with the sector chief, was one of them, and she met with him for less than 30 minutes. So she was down there for less than 30 minutes over the problem that's been facing our nation for close to 4 years. The problem she created. She comes down 20 minutes, talks, takes a couple pictures, and all of a sudden she can turn around and say, I've been to the border. But the reality is, the American public is smarter than that. They realize that this mess that we are seeing today, she created. She can't just come down here and take 20 minutes and take a picture. She needs to apologize to every single agent that she spoke bad about. She needs to apologize to the American public. She needs to apologize to the people out there that have been affected by crimes. And you've got to remember, President Trump was here a couple months ago. He spent over an hour in 100+ degree weather speaking to agents, speaking to management, speaking to victims of criminal aliens, and speaking to the media. I mean, there you go. Just compare that alone, and you know who needs to be the leader of this country. And the apology has to be as big as the insult, as far as I'm concerned.
You raised the victims, Art, and Chief Clem, here's a little more of what Harris said last night about getting tough.
I believe we have a duty to set rules at our border and to enforce them. And I take that responsibility very seriously.
She talks about a duty, Chief Clem, and I can remember back when I covered Kate Steinle's death, it was a major news event, namely because it was so rare. We now are having cases of Kate Steinle almost every week, it seems. So when you hear Vice President Harris vowing to get tougher, what's your reaction?
Well, it's laughable because she was the California Attorney General for 6 years. She's been a U.S. Senator and Vice President for 7 years. She has claimed that her values have not changed. And we have seen that since she's become a Senator and Vice President. She has not valued border security one iota. We have the video to show it. We have the stats to show it. So when I hear her talking about getting tough, it's laughable. As Art just mentioned, she came down there on an official capacity as the Vice President for 20 minutes so she could meet with Border Patrol, get the photo. Then she went to a campaign stop that was closed to the public to talk about this. And I noticed absent from her speech, she didn't talk about the 425,000 criminal aliens that have been released to the country. She didn't talk about the 10 million people that entered illegally on her watch. So she's going to claim victory and tough as AG. She has to own the problem she created as the Vice President.
I deal routinely with border numbers, have been doing so for the last almost 4 years under this administration and prior to it under the Trump administration. And these numbers shocked even myself. I want to show them again, the ICE numbers that are out there. You have over 13,000 convicted murders, 15,000 sexual assaults. These are the non-detainer offenders roaming the country. And I want to ask you, Art, is this a cover-up? Have they tried to cover these numbers up from the public?
I think it's shocking. It's not surprising. And I think what happens is, I don't think so much they covered it up. It's more like, hey, if they don't ask, you don't tell. I think that's part of the problem. If they don't ask, don't tell. And the American public don't know how much they haven't told you because no one's asked. So I'm glad the question was asked and the numbers are out. But look, aside from that, you got to remember, these individuals have these criminal records, and yet they were still released into the country. So now let's go back and beat that dead horse that I always come back to is, look at the gotaways. How much worse could the gotaways be that they even knew that they were not going to qualify to get released? And that is what's shocking. And I'm going to tell you, once we try to figure out a closer number to what did get away, people are going to be even more shocked.
And the known gotaways, more than 1.9 million. Sources told me last week that this fiscal year alone, upwards of 250,000 almost known gotaways. Chief, I want to give you the same question because you were on duty and you see numbers like this We had your colleague, former Chief Aaron Heike, testifying essentially that there was a cover-up. Did you see anything that you felt like this administration was covering up just how bad it is?
Well, like I've said many times, they were more about securing their narrative and not the border. You know, I would not, I listened to their talking points, but I gave my reality of what was happening, what was affecting the boots on the ground in Yuma, especially when I was chief there. You know, this was the problem, is that we kept, this administration worried about processing, letting people in. We knew this threat existed. We oftentimes could not even prosecute people because it took us 3 or 4 days to even get their records checks because we had thousands of people a day coming into Yuma. We know this exists. This is why we keep hammering home about the gotaways and that this is a national safety, a public safety, and national security threat. This is what's coming through. This is what's getting away. This is what was really keeping us up at night. We really could not prosecute somebody if it took us 3 or 4 days to finally process them because it had been more than 48 hours. We couldn't get the U.S. attorney to prosecute them. So we turned to ICE, and ICE would ultimately have to release them because they had no space. So this is a problem. It continues to be a problem.
Were you ever told not to put something out if it was related to information or arrests on SIAs or staggering number increases?
Well, I was told that we should keep it more focused on the big picture, but I was using my platform in limited capacity to put the facts out there. I know that I used to get a few phone calls every once in a while when social media messages went out or I didn't give the talking points as described. But I told them what was happening in Yuma and what was working for us and what wasn't working. They didn't want to hear that, but that was the fact, and that was what I stood for. I wasn't going to have my integrity questioned by this administration.
And before we run out of time, Art, I want to ask your reaction to, it's quite clear that Harris's intention is to bring that border bill, the Senate bill, back, put it front and center. What are your thoughts on that? Do they need to go back to the drawing board, or would you support just a regurgitation of the same bill offered?
Look, she's the vice president, right? And she hasn't done anything for 3.5 years. If she wanted to do anything at all, she would have done it. And as far as I'm concerned, she's still got a couple more months of being vice president. If she really is serious, she would do something now.
Art Del Puente, Chris Clem, great insight as always. Thanks for being here. Have a great Saturday.